Good evening from New York. Imagine a place where an entire ballroom of people cheers when someone makes the repeatedly disproven accusation that the President of the United States is not a citizen of this country he leads. Then they laugh when a former ambassador to the UN suggests that the same president might learn a valuable lesson if Chicago were to be destroyed by a nuclear device. A place where boxes upon boxes of racist Obama Waffles cereal are once again openly, proudly available for sale. That place, in our fifth story on the countdown, is the Omni Shoreham Hotel in Washington, home to your 2009 Conservative Political Action Conference, better known as CPAC. During the 2008 election, Republicans having warned, vote for Obama and you will die. Today, Mr. Bush's UN ambassador, John Bolton, never confirmed, all but saying, because you have voted for Obama, get ready to die. The mustache warning that the security of the U.S. is now at dire risk under the Obama administration, and underscoring his point by cracking a joke about Obama's hometown.
The fact is, on foreign policy, I don't think President Obama thinks it's a priority. He said during the campaign he thought Iran was a tiny threat. Tiny depending on how many nuclear weapons they're ultimately able to deliver on target. It's tiny compared to the Soviet Union, but is the loss of one American city, pick one at random, Chicago, is that a tiny threat?
In fact, Ambassador, get your facts straight. Mr. Obama called Iran a tiny country and never a tiny threat. About the only thing that did make sense at CPAC, the sparse attendance today at a panel featuring Joe the Plumber Wurzelbacher. The room said to only be about a quarter full. At a book signing in Washington last night, fewer than a dozen people showed up to hear Wurzelbacher speak. He was scheduled to sign books and chat for 3 hours. He was gone after 55 minutes. And I'll correct myself, the number of books he sold was not 11, it was 5. At CPAC today, Wurzelbacher telling NBC News he is concerned about the Republican Party's future, especially in 2012, unless it seems if Governor Palin is in the running.
If she ran, I would support her wholeheartedly, but essentially I don't see anybody with a firm, I don't see anybody as far as a leader in the Republican Party right now. No one's, they're afraid to say anything. They're more worried about being politically correct. They're more worried about their special interest groups. They're not worried about the American people. No way, no shape do I ever hear anything about that. They talk a good game, but I see no actions.
And if the GOP is in the midst of an identity crisis now, the party with 6 years, tick, 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 to avoid candidate Wurzelbacher.
I will consider it in about 6 years when my son's in Ohio State. It's a lot of work, and it's a job that's very important, and I would take it as serious as it is. It would be as a servant and not as somebody that feels entitled.
Time now to call in our own Howard Fineman, senior Washington correspondent for Newsweek magazine. Howard, good evening.
Hi, Keith.
Did CPAC not pay for oxygen this year? What went on there?
Well, it's funny you mention oxygen because I was over there, and sometimes you think you need to be in a deep diving bell suit, you know, because you're going way far down into the deep ocean of American life. But, you know, for the people there, they think they're the regular people. I mean, I got this button here that says that's the regular folks versus the liberal elites. They're the regular folks. I guess that leaves you and me out of it. But, you know, they had a lot of people registered there. They had 8,000. They claimed that they had their largest registration ever, even if people didn't turn out to see Joe the Plumber. They're lost at sea, to use my metaphor from before. But in an odd way, they're kind of happy about it because they know they've got a lot of work to do. And there's a whole generation of people, kids, frankly, who grew up in the Reagan-Bush years, who really are yearning for leadership, and they know they don't have it right now.
Even those kids from that time, how exactly in their minds would the nuclear destruction of Chicago teach President Obama a lesson, or how is that funny?
Well, the conservative humor movement consists of one person, Christopher Buckley, and I'm not sure even he would be caught at CPAC. Outside of that, it doesn't exist. It's not funny, but this is at the core of what's left of what used to be a very interesting and very ideas-oriented movement that took many years of decades of wandering in the ideological wilderness to figure out who they were through people like Bill Buckley and others and Ronald Reagan, whose diaries, by the way, if you read them, are full of interesting ideas and lots of thinking. They're reduced to fear, Keith. This is what they tried to run. This is what they ran on in 2004 with George Bush. It's what they tried to run on in 2008. It's kind of like the last little thing they've got, that plus opposition to any taxes of any kind. That's all they've got, and it's not funny.
But they do also have a problem here of throwing the past versions of themselves under the bus. President Bush knocked at CPAC, including by Ambassador Bolton. Is there a disconnect there? And does anybody sit there and go, well, yes, we are disavowing everything we represented 3 months ago?
Well, it's very interesting. I think the undercurrent of anger about all the Republican leadership, including George Bush, was one of the most interesting things about CPAC today. They're angry at George Bush and at the Republican leadership in the Congress for, among other things, the unbelievable profligate spending of the Bush years. George Bush didn't veto a single piece of spending legislation. The Republican leadership, when they had control, waved through all kinds of spending with all kinds of budgetary tricks that Barack Obama is trying to fess up to and change now. So the conservative bedrock is very angry at the Republican leadership, including George W. Bush. There were lots of negative comments about Bush and all the current Republican leadership on the Hill, especially Eric Cantor, who a lot of them view as a great soundbite artist, but a guy who doesn't have any real thoughts, unlike the hero of CPAC, who remains Newt Gingrich.
But if the conservatives are not the Republicans and the Republicans are not the conservatives,
right,
how could they possibly compete with a fairly organized and unified Democratic liberal left-wing base?
Well, they can't right now. There's a total disconnect between the party politics and the conservative base. And that's what the Republican candidates who are going to be trooping through there are going to try to reconnect. But it's not going to be that easy because a lot of these people are very skeptical, even of the Republican Party right now. And that's a sign of both a party and a movement that's in disarray.
Now, when you hear that from Joe Wurzelbacher, and he sounds fairly thoughtful on the subject, you know there's a lot of trouble in that room. Howard Feynman of MSNBC and Newsweek, thanks for getting me the pin. And as always, great thanks for being with us.
Okay, Keith. I'll send it to you.
Thank you.